Welcome to another program in our series on Free Thinking Forum. My name is Bill Weir. I'm the guest host. You're used to having Dr. David Breeden here, but he is busy getting ready for an important event in his life, and that is the installation service tomorrow. And I have with me instead the wonderful Vanessa Gomez-Brake from the Bay Area, where you are with the Chaplaincy Institute.
Correct. Thanks for having me, Bill. It's a pleasure to be here in Minnesota.
And you're also co-chair of the Bay Area Humanists.
Yeah, I'm co-president of the San Francisco Bay Area Humanists along with my colleague, Jim Barnett.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So we'll get to talk about all of these, but how would you like to tell us about yourself?
Well, as you said, I'm coming from the San Francisco Bay Area. I've lived in Oakland for the last several years. And I came there because of my interest in peace work, actually, which I think is actually an extension of my humanist values, my humanist philosophy. Mm-hmm. And I was happy that I got the invitation to talk to you because I feel like my work at the Chaplaincy Institute, an interfaith seminary, as well as my role with the Bay Area Humanists, are very collaborative. I see it as a connection of my own values, seeing it play out into the world. And so I wanted to just tell you a bit about my work in interfaith as well as with humanists here in the U.S.
Good. Where would you like to begin?
Well, why don't I start with the Chaplaincy Institute then?
Okay.
Well, let's see here. The Chaplaincy Institute's mission is to educate and empower people for new models of interfaith service and spiritual care to heal and transform the world. Now, that's a big order, right?
It sure is.
And don't we all want to heal and transform the world?
Yes. Now, most chaplaincies are specific to either Catholic or Protestant or, but yours...
I think, you know, that's the idea, that chaplaincy is strictly these faith groups, but actually how it plays out in the world is very different. A lot of people see chaplains in hospitals, hospice, prisons. We see them in the military and even in the community, you know, doing rituals of life. But how it plays out in California actually is that, such as the prison system, they'll recognize the 5 big faiths, as they call it, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, and so forth. However, at my seminary, an interfaith seminary, we train our students in a variety of faith backgrounds, as well as how to see to the spiritual care of those who don't have a faith, whether you're atheist, agnostic, and so forth. And so we teach our students to meet the person, not the religion, because even if you meet a person of a particular religious background, it doesn't mean that their understanding of their religion is how they practice it in the world. And in some ways, I feel like the Chaplaincy Institute really is on the edge of seminary because they're very practical in their application of this work. So I'm really happy when our students, I see them go out into the world and they're able to really see to the spiritual care and healing needs of anyone they meet. That is really magnificent
work that the Chaplaincy Institute is doing, because if a chaplain can minister to all of the people in their care, that is so valuable.
And it's a tall order, and who knows if anyone can truly do it skillfully, but we train our students as much as we can to be ready to meet whoever it is in that room.
And how many, have there been hundreds of graduates so far?
Yeah, we have nearly, actually at this point, maybe over 200 graduates. The school was founded in Santa Cruz in 1998, and so we just celebrated our 15th year anniversary. But in that time, we have 2 graduations a year, and people are either ordained or simply receive a certificate in interfaith studies, and then they are endorsed by our community to go on and become professional chaplains in whatever setting they so choose.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, that's very valuable. Now, there are some humanists among the...
You know, it's pretty interesting. The students that come to our school come from a variety of backgrounds. I would say I see Catholics and Christians of every type. We've had Jewish as well as Sufi. And related to that, I have seen a number of UUs, Unitarian Universalists, who were of the humanist persuasion. And I can think of at least one or a few that ascribe to a non-theistic background. And so I would say that actually we do have humanists in our midst. And the fact that as director of operations myself, I proudly speak to my humanist philosophy as well as my atheist non-belief. And because I am able to serve in that role as a staff member, I like to keep in mind that my own group of people's spiritual needs are also being spoken to in the classroom. And so I get to be, you know, the humanist in the room. And I also get to greet those new students who, you know, they could come from any type of background, traditional, religious, or not. So.
Well, good. It sounds like you serve a wide range of people.
We do. It's kind of amazing.
And but you moved from Santa Cruz to Berkeley?
Yeah, I think
to be closer to the theological schools and.
Yeah, it just happened at the time that the founder of the school, Reverend Gina Rose Halpern, she had decided to move the school to Berkeley. And actually, are you familiar with Berkeley at all?
Yes.
There is a place in northern Berkeley, just north of the University of California campus called Holy Hill. As you go up the hills in Berkeley, there are a number of seminaries in that space, and we are in close proximity of all the schools. And so there's seminaries for Episcopalians, Catholics, Orthodox, and they even have centers for the study of Islam and Judaism and Buddhism. And so we're in good company, and that we are just one of many seminaries who are seeking to fulfill this need.
But your focus is on the chaplaincy.
Ours is very practically focused on chaplaincy.
Enabling your students to become broadly able to serve people of many different denominations.
That's right, and I think that's why I was drawn to work at the Chaplaincy Institute, because I could clearly see how the students go into action into the world, whereas necessarily I see at other seminaries that the studies are very focused on the theology and so forth, and while that makes sense for someone trying to understand their faith background, it doesn't necessarily tell that student how to interact in the world. And so the Chaplaincy Institute prepares our students to be in the world. Good.
Now, could we go on to your secular work with the Bay Area Humanists?
Sure.
San Francisco Bay Humanists.
Well, let me tell you a story about this first, because having lived in Oakland for nearly 6 years now, I hadn't found a humanist community. Not in Oakland, not in Berkeley, and not in San Francisco.
Really?
And what's funny is that for a long time, I didn't realize that humanists were organizing either in a church or as a community. And so in some ways, it was kind of sad for me, because I had this philosophy of life, but I didn't have anyone to share it with. And so I ended up studying at the Humanist Institute, which is a graduate level program. And I studied there because simply I wanted to meet other humanists. And you know what happened? I entered the classroom for the first time. It was a few years ago now, and I met Jim Barnett. Jim Barnett was a longtime Unitarian Universalist in San Francisco who had started a humanist group in his church. And simply from meeting Jim Barnett, we decided we needed to found a group that was outside the church, that was welcoming to anyone who shared our philosophy and was interested in discussing topics related to the secular world. And so after having met him, and we were still continuing to study together at the Humanist Institute, but we said, let's start this, and we did. And it's only been nearly over a year old at this point, but we're pretty active. And I think we're fulfilling a need for folks in the Bay Area. Like I said, I couldn't find a humanist community. I have since learned that there is a very large community in Silicon Valley in the South Bay, but I think Jim and I and our whole humanist community is really serving the need of the San Francisco, Oakland, and Berkeley scene in terms of bringing people together.
Good. Well, congratulations on getting that rolling.
Thank you, thank you. It's been a real joy just to meet other humanists.
No, I would have thought that Bay Area humanists would have been active for decades.
You know, I had been hearing things that different groups start up, and as you know, groups start and groups end. You know, that's life. And what's interesting is everyone thinks of California as a very either new age or very atheistic culture. And in some ways, we're pretty secular there in the Bay Area. But to bring people together underneath that umbrella of secular interests, you know, wasn't necessarily happening. And so I'm really happy to have started this with Jim and just to create the opportunity for programs to be offered. And I've seen in this short year span that as we get more members, they are taking on activities of their own interests. And so not only do we have monthly discussion groups, presentations from various leaders, as well as we do monthly walk-in talks, which in California is key because we've got good weather nearly year-round. And so you can find us hiking around Golden Gate Park or on the Fisherman's Wharf or up a mountain, but we tie that to a social issue of interest so that we can be having deep discussion while we're, you know, breathing really hard. And then on top of that, of course, as humanists, we always want to see our values lived out in this world, and so we now also have a service group. So at least once a month, we're going to the San Francisco Food Bank, and next month, we're going to do Rebuild San Francisco. And so not only are we feeding the homeless and those who are in need, we're also building homes for those who lack shelter.
Great. Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to know that things are underway now.
Yeah.
What kind of programs do you have?
You know, we have really a wealth of leadership in the Bay Area, having several universities within close proximity, as well as Stanford and so forth. We try to draw on not only the resources within our community, but also from the academic institutions. And so, and you can only imagine the sheer spectrum of topics that any group could cover. You name it, we've probably done it. We've had someone talk about secular spirituality, who's one of our board members, which was pretty cool. We had someone speak about being a parent of a non-binary gender individual, and any number of things. And I will say on top of that, you can usually find us at a Pride Parade in June in San Francisco.
Yes.
Marching down Market Street with our atheists and humanist friends. And yeah, we do any number of things throughout the year.
Now, you mentioned a term unfamiliar to me,
non-binary gender. So that means in terms of binary, we've typically thought of as male and female. And in this day and age, we realize that not everyone can ascribe to such a limited descriptor for their gender. So yeah, so it could speak to someone who was born physically male, but perhaps they feel they should have been female, and so they're living their life that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa, or any number of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly, I've known people who have traits that we identify with male and female.
For sure.
And
I love that term actually, because I think even as us, as individuals, as feminine or as womanly as I might feel, that's also pretty limiting, I think, to think that I can't be masculine in some ways. And so to go beyond the binary, how powerful is that?
More of a spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting. And can you tell us more about the humanist philosophy that you find valuable?
Sure. Well, what we say at the Bay Area Humanists is that it is our purpose to promote humanism, and which is an ethical, democratic, naturalistic life stance that prioritizes reason, scientific and critical thinking. And it's a system of humanist ethics and secular values as a rational alternative to those of religion. And really, I think what's at the core of my humanist belief is compassion. How might I be compassionate to myself as well as the other humans in this world? And really how I live out to improve the world that I live in, not only for myself, but for future generations.
I have a brief definition of humanism.
Please, please.
And that is trying to be the best possible citizen of humanity.
I would agree with that.
And that includes rational, empirical, compassionate, and what else?
Yes, all the good stuff. I like to say.
But not supernatural beliefs.
Correct, correct. You know, it's interesting. My undergraduate education was in psychology and religious studies. So it's clear that from that young age, I was interested in, you know, how the mind worked, but also what is this thing called religion that expresses itself in so many ways. And ultimately, that led me to study peacemaking, nonviolent communication, social justice, and all these things. And this was even before I knew I was a humanist. But once I knew I was a humanist, I realized why I was on that path, because that's what was driving me to improve this world. So.
And we've had on this program before representatives of the Nonviolent Peace Force.
Oh, great, great.
They're headquartered here in Minneapolis, as you may know.
Okay.
Rather, they're headquartered in Brussels, but their U.S. headquarters is here.
Yeah, a lot of good people, and we have an active community in the Bay Area as well, and we have a really active social activism in even radical type group of people in the Bay Area. So nonviolence really comes into play.
And another a guest I've had on the program is creating the Minnesota Peacemaking or Peacekeeping Leadership Institute. And
Peacemaking Leadership Institute. Cool.
Yeah, and I think with her training, that an acronym STAR training. I forget what the STAR stands for. She is training people to bring situations that might lead to violence, might lead to revenge, to a more satisfactory, nonviolent conclusion.
Yeah. No,
so
I definitely believe in that in terms of sometimes, you know, revenge, violence, war seems like the simple answer because we're not imaginative enough to create that alternative. What does peace look like beyond, you know, simply reciprocity of whatever pain was incurred by whatever party? So yeah, I'm very much in alignment with nonviolent practices.
Good. And are there some other organizations in the Bay Area that?
Well, we have.
That
I was going to say, when I first moved to the Bay Area, I worked for Pace Bene, which was based on the Franciscan.
Oh, that's Latin, isn't it?
It's Latin, based on the Franciscan saying of peace and goodness, you know, be with you. Obviously, they came from a Christian inspired background, but how they lived their lives in the world was to apply these nonviolent practices into any number of social situations that they wanted to see remedied. And so that's initially what brought me to the Bay Area. I worked with that organization briefly before moving on to the Chaplaincy Institute. But like I said, the Bay Area is so strongly attuned to nonviolence. You may or may not have heard about all the many things that are going on in terms of Oakland, the violence that we see there, as well as yeah, a number of things. I can see how nonviolence has been put into play.
And so Oakland is working on helping eliminate the violence.
Yeah, you know what's cool? Not far from where I live is the Oakland Peace Center. And the First Christ Church is actually the umbrella organization for it, but they brought together all these nonviolent and peace-oriented organizations under one room. They gave them offices, they gave them workshop space, event space, and so forth, because they wanted them to collaborate on dreaming up a peaceable Oakland. And so how neat is that, that it's close by to me, which is even like one step away from the Humanist Church there in Oakland. And so I feel like I'm in a really lively space to put my humanist philosophy into action.
Oh, that's exciting that you can draw these upon these organizations and at times bring them together in co-sponsoring.
For sure.
And I'm thinking that nonviolent Peace Force might fit in there too.
Yeah, and I'm sure they are active in some ways there. I just don't know them directly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And do you have any particular goals with the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area Humanists?
Right now, we're simply seeking to educate as well as build community. I'm trying to think of the saying, but it relates to how an individual can find happiness through helping others.
Yes.
Right?
Indeed.
And I know I found that to be true for myself. And so in addition to the education piece, we simply are coming together to help each other in community and then help our larger community through our service activities. And that's a really simple goal right now, and perhaps we're going to grow into other things, but right now Jim and I and the others are finding some real satisfaction in just that.
Good. Yeah. One of my current activities is leading a course as part of the University of Minnesota Osher Lifelong Learning Institute on the ageless spirit.
The ageless spirit.
And we had the editor of the Ageless Spirit join us, and she used to be with National Public Radio.
Wow.
Connie Goldman.
Yeah.
And she did the interviews, first of all, with celebrities and other leaders in America back some decades ago. And now she's got a new book on the gift of caregiving. And it appears to me that that could be a channel for helping humanists learn more about how to really care for others.
Yeah. One of my colleagues is always talking about, he simply wants to know how to be a better human being, you know? He's like, teach me how to take care of myself, you know, as well as others. And that your colleague sounds like that would be of real interest to most humanists. And we've done the same thing where if there is a book of interest that's coming to print, that we encourage, you know, if there's a book tour, we try to get the author in so we can have a chance to speak with them, hear about the text, and so forth.
Well, I hope you get acquainted with Connie Goldman's The Gift of Caregiving.
Yeah.
Now, you are planning to go to a national event soon, and speaking, what is that?
So the American Humanists Association, which is based out of Washington, D.C., they hold a national conference every year. So last year it was in San Diego. This year it's going to be in Philadelphia, and I'm not sure where I'll be next year, but it goes across the states. And this will be my first time going there. I've wanted to attend the event, just haven't had the opportunity till this year. And luckily I get to speak about my education at the Humanist Institute and what a transformational experience it's been for me to meet people doing humanist work throughout the U.S. And so I'm going to talk about my studies there on a panel with other people from the Humanist Institute, and then I'm just going to have fun.
Good. Good.
You know, what's interesting is they have really great speakers from across the secular movement. And on the top of that, have you heard of the Sunday Assembly? Which is the atheist church, as
that's starting in London.
That started in London. So Sanderson Jones, one of the founders of Sunday Assembly, is going to be at the conference this year, and so he's going to do his thing that Sunday morning. Now,
I hear that the Sunday Assembly is getting started in the Twin Cities metropolitan area.
I heard that. You know,
and
oh, go ahead.
And they're going to meet in what I call the Humanist Center. the location owned by the First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis.
See, that's so smart, because you're going to have several humanist organizations under one building, right? And you see the different ways that humanism is expressing itself. And I think Sunday Assembly is going to draw in a few people that you may not have seen before.
Yes.
And what's great about the Sunday Assembly is that Sanderson Jones went on a 40-day tour, I think, of the U.S., and they were trying to found different atheist churches along the way. And so in New York, I believe there's one, Boston, and even in Oakland now, we're seeing little atheist churches popping up, and really it sounds like it's rock and roll, a good speaker, and then just tea time like anyone does.
And a lot of good humor joking.
Good humor joking, that's important. It's all meant to have a good time.
Yes. So we're looking forward to the flourishing of humanism here. In fact, the first humanist talks in Minneapolis were given by the minister of the First Unitarian Church back in 1916.
You guys are leaders here at First Unitarian Society. I mean, we were talking about the Humanist Manifesto, and I believe you had signers from your congregation on the first, second, or even the third editions of the manifesto. So you've got your stuff together.
And we're fortunate in having as our new minister the Reverend Dr. David Breeden.
Yes.
Do you have some impression of him?
You know, I've met him briefly, and I was invited here to for a big event, and I've been glad because his vision for First Unitarian Society and for humanism in general is a big one. And I'm excited to see how it plays out here in the city, because simply we are limited by our own imaginations, and he's got a big one.
Yes. Well, how fortunate we are to have you here too. You'll be speaking about the millennial.
Yeah, I'll be speaking about the millennial vision for the new humanism.
And what is that?
Well,
in one minute.
I think you know the saying, deed not creed. So we've done plenty of talking as humanists. As critical thinkers, we love to chat, right?
Oh,
but I think for the millennials, we're much more in tune with seeing it in action. So we want to see the practical application of our humanist values in this world right now.
Good. I like that.
Me too.
I've been working on that for some decades.
So it's not so different of a vision then, but maybe it might be playing out a little differently. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, we're so glad that you've been able to share this half hour with us, Vanessa, and I want to thank you for